Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to see you today. I have been working on the business coaching classes, which doesn't really help you if you're not doing business coaching. And so I wanted to just take a break from those and do a course that I have been so excited to do. Oh my goodness, so excited to do this. This also goes hand in hand with an announcement that we have. So if you're listening to this video, you're probably going to be the first to hear it if you're listening to it shortly after I release it. And that is that I am releasing one of our least expensive workshops yet. Yay for cheap. Inexpensive. Let's use that word. For the Biltmore. So I'm going to do a macro intensive. Well, Keith is actually going to help me with this. So Keith and I are doing a macro intensive 2-day workshop at the Biltmore Estate. I am over the moon. I am so honored and so excited. I don't know, to my knowledge, I don't think they've ever allowed anything like this before. So I'm feeling really thankful. So while we were getting that web page working up, I was pulling up my macro shots and I found this one of hydrangeas and I like it. I've called it, as you can see up here, New Birth. But I thought, you know what? I think I could change this up and make it slightly different. So I did that yesterday. I took this, which I had done this, a couple years back or so, and instead I took the same photo, flipped it, and now I have a totally different shot. It's just like that. So step number 1 out of this video, go back to your old photos and rework them with the new tools that you have. You might find that you have a completely different image because I'll tell you, this one looks a lot different from that. It's like 2 totally different photos. Isn't that amazing? So I kind of just want to go back here and show you what I do. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to redo this image all over again. So let me go ahead and do File, Save As. I'm going to save this as SYS Macro Tutorial. And so then that will save it right here so we can actually work on this without hurting my original file. All right, this is called SYS Macro Tutorial. Let me go ahead and just delete what I've got here. So that's kind of where we are, and that's a good starting point. You can see there's still some textures on it, but that's okay because we're going to add more and we're going to change more. For the purpose of this workshop, I just want to teach you some techniques that I do with my macro. So the first thing that I would suggest that you do, so step number 1 if you're writing this down, is really look at the composition of your image and decide where you want to go with it. So you obviously want to have your points of interest. So in this case, the point of interest, tip on macro, the point of interest will usually be either a dominant petal and or the core of the flower itself. So the place where the pollen gathers, whatever that's called. I think it starts with an S, but I don't know, so I'm not going to say it. But it will be the core of the flower. So one of those 2 things is very likely. It could also be the stem. It's whatever your dominant feature is. So in this image, our dominant feature is this right here. So when I was looking at this image yesterday and thought to flip it around, then I thought, well, what I'll do is I'm just going to completely rotate this picture because I'm not limited to just having it, this horizontal way. So to flip an image, you go to Image, Image Rotation in Photoshop, and you can just rotate it. So in this case, I want to go counterclockwise. Okay, do I love that? No, because where my eye's getting drawn to is right up in here, and I'm missing this. So what if we flipped it the other way? So I want to completely flip it upside down. So I'll go to Image, Image Rotation, and I'm going to do a vertical, flip canvas vertical. Okay, so now that's still a little bit better. I'm not sure I'm totally happy with it. So let's go ahead and rotate it clockwise. Image, Image Rotation, clockwise. Okay, so this is a whole new picture now. Now, have you noticed, this is the same picture, but look at still how different it is. Isn't that nuts? I have no idea how I even got that. I don't see that in this time. That's not what I'm seeing today. It's so funny. You can go back to your images and you can see something new every time. I like it this way, and I like it this way because I have now my my subject interest kind of on the top right here. So I've got a beautiful swirl, pocket of new blossoms. So I'm going to leave it like this for this tutorial. And let's go ahead and move on. So one of the things I'm going to do is I would really like this to be a lot brighter. So I'm going to go to my layer. I'm going to make a duplicate layer. So I just right clicked on that and hit duplicate layer just by right clicking, duplicate layer. That's how I did that. And then I want to go up to filter, and this is going to be how I brighten my photo. Filter, camera raw filter. There's a different way to do this too, but I just like to do it this way because I really like to see this histogram. And then I'm going to open it up so it's really light and white. I might boost my clarity up just a smidge. And I'm also going to go to my dehaze tool, which is over here under FX. And I am going to bump that up just a smidge. All right, let's hit OK and go back to our shot. So turning it off, we can see it's just a little bit more dull. Now it's just brighter and whiter. I'm not crazy that I don't know that we're going to keep those greens in there. We'll kind of see how this evolves. With macro, I kind of just feel my way through this. So I sometimes have a rough plan, but I kind of just see how things look. Now, this is a tool, and I'm going to do another course on how to get this, but this is Adobe Paper Texture Pro, and I use this all the time. What's wonderful about this is when you click on it, you actually get all of these flypaper textures. Flypaper is a company that creates textures. You get these all for free, and you can add more textures. But, you know, I've done tons and tons and tons of macro images just with these. As you can see, I've got these check marks. So I'm going to do a different course on adding this because adding your Adobe Paper Texture plugin can sometimes be a little difficult. So look for that to come here very shortly. So the first thing I'm going to look at, you can see there's all of these different colors, right? The first thing I want to do is I want to pick a complementary color or a color in the direction I want to see the photo go. So if I wanted to move with more of the popping of these greens and make this more of a green hue instead of like the white tones I have in the other one I just did, I might pick something like this. I like this one. It's a little bit earthy. It has less blues like this one does. So what I do is I just select this right here. Now what this does, you could actually do this manually, and I'm going to teach you how to do it manually in this course. But this does it automatically for you, which is what I absolutely love. So let me just close this aside. It's still there. It's right here. And so when I click it, it's gone. But to get rid of it, you click on this arrow. It actually took that paper and it put it right underneath here. So if we were to pull off this mask, we would see this paper. In fact, let me just do it. Oh, it's not going to let me do it that way. This is basically just a paper. That right there, you could see it for just a brief moment. And that is on top of this. So it's automatically selecting your settings right here. It's usually you're going to be at soft light. Sometimes I'll do overlay, which can bring up more texture, but it usually makes the colors too dominant, and I really don't like that. You can see there's the paper texture or canvas texture on that, which I do like with the overlay, but I don't like those colors, so we'd have to do some major shifting with that. But let's get back to soft light. Just remember that when you're playing with textures, the ones I would recommend is overlay and soft light. Those are probably going to be the two you really want to use to start. Okay, so let's turn this off and on. I do like where this is going. I might want to just tone these down just a little bit. So we could do that one of two ways. The first way is we could actually, on our mask, take our brush with dark, because dark's going to take it away, and at a low opacity, your opacity's here, so we're going to just lower it down to 28%, and we could paint off some of that texture. You can see it's coming off just a little bit. Now I'm at 30%, so let's take it to 70%, so I just hit 7, and that changes my opacity. Now it should really start coming off. You can see it's happening over here. It's pulling it off. So we're losing some of that strong color, and I'm going to do an on and off for you here in a sec. Okay, so watch that. So you can see now the inside here is not really changing. It's more of this stuff over here that we're really kind of seeing the texture. So I actually kind of like that. And I do think that we'll go with the green. I'm kind of liking this pop of color. So now it might be that I'll use a couple different textures on one. So let's say I want to have something more white and light over here. Well, this one has white and light over on this way. So let me go ahead and click on that one. We'll let that auto generate. Did you see all those beautiful brush strokes on this? Oh my goodness, I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, notice how it has definitely changed the tone. So watch the colors and the tones shift when we take this layer on and off. There's off, there's on. See how it's making this muddy? In painting, we would call this starting to get muddy. So I don't like that at all, but look at how smooth and milky it's making this stuff out here. This is really pretty. So let's take it off and just look over here. See how it's kind of making it more painterly? We're seeing a little bit more quote-unquote canvas. I love that. So I'm going to leave that, and again, I'm going to go back here with a pretty strong opacity. I'm going to leave it at 70%, and I'm just painting off, again, black brush. I'm going to paint off the inside here. And now see how that's giving me a lot of depth? Like all of a sudden we got all this depth down here. So let's look at this on and off again. Isn't that so much more beautiful? So it's just starting to look more painterly now. There's a couple things in here that I'm not super crazy about that I'm going to want to clone out. So I'm going to go ahead and select all these layers. I did that by starting at the top, holding down my Shift key and pressing here, and then I'm going to do Shift, Option, Command, E. Shift, Option, or Alt, Command, E. Shift, Alt, Command, E if you're on a PC. Now I'm going to take my spot healing brush, and I'm going to go up into here. See this dark part? I don't want it to pull the eye into the corner. So I just got rid of that, and I'm not sure about this. I'm thinking we might leave it. Let's take it off and see how it looks. A little bit more. Yeah, I like it without. I don't want anything to draw the attention from this right here. So I'm actually okay with that. So now at a new starting point, let's go ahead and let's duplicate the existing layer. Okay, we're duplicating that. Now I want to adjust some of the greens just a little bit. It has a little bit too much yellow in there for me, so I want to change that ever so slightly. There's a couple different ways you can do it. In this tutorial, we're going to stick with just the one tool, and we'll build on tools as we do more of these together. I'm going to go up to Filter. I'm going to go back to my Camera Raw filter, which is kind of like Lightroom. And I'm going to go over here. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 over from the right, the HSL grayscale. And this is going to allow me, there's 3 different tools within this one tool: hue, saturation, and luminance. And I know I've taught you all this in a different course, but let me run through it again. Let's start from luminance. Luminance is basically going to change the light and darkness of color. So for our yellows, for example, we have a lot of yellows in here. We can make the yellows really dark. Ugh. We can make them really light. Too much. If you want to reset yourself, you double click on this and it'll pull it right back to 0. So might make some changes there, but that's luminance. It's going to change. It's going to make your yellows or your blues or your reds really dark, or make them really light. So if you want to adjust the value, and we use the word value when we're describing the level of light or how light or dark something is. When you want to change the value of a color, you can do that here in luminance. Saturation is exactly what saturation sounds like. If we wanted to make our yellows more saturated, we'd bump it up. If we wanted to desaturate it, ooh, I'm kind of liking that, we would do that here. You don't always want to saturate things. Sometimes you can find the most beauty is hidden when you desaturate some things. Remember, especially with macro photography, you're creating art that people might legitimately hang in their home. So first create it for yourself and think, what would look good in my house? And if it would look good in your house, probably you're going to find that it would look good in other people's as well. Let's leave that. We're going to come back to this one and do a little bit more with saturation. Now, hue's different. Hue is actually changing the tone of the color. So if we're dwelling in our yellows, if we took this bar here and we went down to the left, it's going to take us more orange. Watch. Okay, now we're changing the color. We're shifting the color. Let's go back to the middle. If we took it to the right, we're going to find we're going to lean more towards the greens. So I'm actually liking that this kind of middle yellow, which I'm not really crazy about, I do want to change it a little bit more green. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to push it ever so slightly. I'm not going up here because that's not going to work for us. Just these really small adjustments can make a world of difference. So I think I'm going to kind of like it at about +9. Maybe we'll go a little bit more. All right, I'm digging that. I think that that's really good. I really love the soft greens of this. So let's also go back to our original saturation and let's take our yellows, which is actually green now, but let's pull it down ever so slightly and then let's go to our greens and just desaturate it just a smidge. And now we're going to hit OK. This will give us a brand new layer, and let's turn this off and on to see what this looks like. So that's what we started with before we went up here to filter and then the camera raw filter. And let's see what this looks like. So that's where we were, which it looked good in the beginning, but now we're getting to some place where our tones are just a little bit more muted and they're really, really starting to look lovely. Now, again, I think I want to make this just a smidge lighter in some of these areas. So rather than making the whole thing globally lighter, although we do have some room to do that, let's make another copy, duplicate layer, and let's go ahead and go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, Contrast. And I'm going to move this up here so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm just going to pull up the brightness just a little bit. Now, let's have a peek at that. Notice that we're not clipping, so we haven't done anything damaging to our photo. And that's a little hot. I like it in here, but I think we can decrease that value, so pull it off a little bit. And I'm liking that a lot better. But I don't want to lose this here, so let's go ahead and make a mask. So what I'm seeing is I like what's happening here with what we just did. I'm less liking it back in here. I want to have it slightly darker. So I'm going to go ahead and make a mask, which you make a mask down this way. We're going to select the mask. We're going to use the brush, and then we're going to make sure it's on black. We're going to make it a higher opacity. Let's put it like at 90, and we're going to paint off what we've just done, so that we don't have it bright over here, because that's what we just did. We just made the whole thing brighter with the brightness tool, brightness contrast tool, so we're going to pull it off. Okay, let's go over what we've done. So the first thing that we did was we duplicated our copy. We did some of the textures. We applied textures, which if you remember, it's this way. So you add a texture just by clicking on it. It's going to automatically throw it onto your texture. You are then going to decide, it'll always appear kind of, in this case, it's going to appear right here. You can turn it off and on to see if you like it. You are going to play with soft light or overlay. And then you can actually change the opacity, because you might like what it's doing a little bit, but you don't want it to do it a lot. So you can change the opacity of that layer, and that's going to increase or decrease the level. So you could make your own recipe, saying using this one at 20%, this one at 60%, and this one at 100%. You'll just fiddle with it. You'll just kind of play with it. You can be very painterly and artistic, and there's really no wrong. Just do what makes the image look good for you. You will never use the same recipe twice. I can almost guarantee you that, because you're going to have a different subject matter all the time. So that was that. Let's go ahead and delete this one, though, because we don't want that one. So we did 2 paper textures. And then we started, let me go here to see what we actually did on this layer. So on this one, we cleaned it up. So we're taking away any distractions. Remember, we got rid of this up here and this here. So removing distractions can be, that would be actually this was step 1, so let's call this step 2. Step 3 was we were changing the tonal value, so the level of light and the color of our greens or our yellows with this layer right here. So that's where we were, and that's where we ended up. We wanted to move towards a green. And then the last thing we thought was, well, let's go ahead and lighten this up a little bit, but we didn't want to have the light that we had just added affected to here. We wanted to kind of keep a soft vignette and a painterly feel. You can see these beautiful brush strokes. Aren't those gorgeous? You can see them here and here, and that's added by the paper texture. So that is what we have, guys. That is how I do my macro. I hope that this was helpful to you. I want to hear your questions, so let me know what they are and sharpen your shutter, and I'm going to see y'all again real soon. Let's do this again.